Week 6, the 3-2 San Francisco 49ers at the 2-3 Atlanta Falcons. We've got another Locked On Podcast Network crossover episode. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker of Locked On 49ers with Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. Biggest storylines, key matchups, and predictions for Week 6 coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers and Locked On Falcons crossover Week 6, 49ers and Falcons. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers and Locked On Falcons your first listens here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is so much fun and it's easy to play. No competing with other players, just you versus the projections available. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on that entry. It can literally take less than 60 seconds to enter. It's that easy. We love Prize Picks. We know you will too. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. As I mentioned, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker here of Locked On 49ers with Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons. Aaron, how are things going with those Atlanta Falcons? We were talking a little bit off the air. It's kind of an odd team, competitive, scrappy. Is there more than scrappy there for this team, though? Is it upset city potentially for the Atlanta Falcons? What's the biggest storyline going on right now with those Falcons in 2022?
Yeah, I think this week is a great week for the Falcons to kind of test their mettle. The strength of this team is their offense and really that running game. And they're going up against a 49ers team that the strength of their team is their defense. And they've been clamping down on pretty much everybody's run defense all year long. So it's kind of strength on strength. And so we kind of get to find out, if the Falcons are for real. This has been something we've been talking about on Locked On Falcons for the last couple of weeks. They had Tampa Bay last week. They have San Francisco this week. They have Cincinnati next week. This kind of 3-game stretch is going to determine if this team is for real, if this team can really surprise a lot of folks, surprise me and surprise a lot of Falcon fans who did not expect this team to be a playoff team this year, thought we would be a scrappy sort of team that could keep it competitive in a lot of these games. But this sort of stretch of games is going to kind of define if this team is capable of more than that. And I think this 49er team is a good test for them. And I think there's a potential possibility that they could upset this 49er team, especially given how beat up that team is.
Aaron, I have a question. Do you believe that it is truly an upset? I understand. I look at the record and, they got 3 close losses. 49ers are 3-2 right now. But I mean, these teams are a play away from either being 5-0 or maybe even having the same record. And Atlanta's playing at home. They're playing these playoff teams extremely close. They were a really bad penalty last week against Tampa Bay away from having an opportunity to actually win that game. So I get the point spread says that it's an upset, but do you believe that it's an upset in your eyes if the Atlanta Falcons pull it off?
Yeah, I think it would be to most people. But yeah, I do think your point is that these teams are probably a lot closer than probably the records and the point spread maybe would indicate. And, I look at this 49ers team that they haven't really, their defense has obviously been playing great this year, but they also haven't really been tested by a lot of elite offenses so far this season. You look at the quarterbacks of the teams that they've beat, and played, like Justin Fields and Geno Smith, a cooked version of Russell Wilson, Baker Mayfield. Obviously, the Rams have a pretty good offense, but the 49ers always beat the Rams, so it doesn't feel like that's a huge challenge. Now, obviously, no one's going to sort of put Marcus Mariota on a pedestal as an elite quarterback or anything like that. But I kind of wonder if the 49ers walk away from this game with a win, are people going to be like, yeah, they haven't really played anybody. And then, next week, the 49ers got Kansas City Chiefs. And so that's kind of be a challenge. And so part of me kind of wonders that maybe the 49ers are looking a little bit ahead, to that game. And maybe the Falcons can kind of catch them sleeping this week.
Well, I think the Falcons have caught the 49ers sleeping. And what was it? 2019, 49ers were the dominant team in the NFC. And next thing you know, you lose a game on the 1-inch line because Julio Jones makes an amazing play. There is no Julio Jones. There is no Matt Ryan. And will there be Cordell Patterson? Because that's a guy. You talked about the strength of the Atlanta Falcons and their run game. And Cordell Patterson is a big reason for that. So what's the outlook on Patterson? And if he can't go, what's it looking like behind him?
And Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts injuries is going to be a big one. He did return to practice, so things are looking at least somewhat optimistic this early in the week that he will play on Sunday. I'm sorry. And Cordell Patterson will not play because he's on injured reserve. But the Falcons reserve running backs and Caleb Huntley and Tyler Algier, their 5th-round draft pick, kind of has stepped up the last 2 weeks. They really played well in the second half against the Browns, and were really a big reason why they were able to get that win. And they also played well, towards the second half of the Bucs game, and really got that offense back into the game. So I think the Falcons' run game, while it is not as good with a healthy Patterson, it still is capable of being able to move the ball effectively, I think, with the 2 backups.
Yeah, the Falcons, there was the Saints game, there was the Rams game, and the Rams win doesn't look as good for the 49ers, and it doesn't look as good for the Falcons the way they played some of those games. So I'm really interested to see what this Falcons team looks like, because I'm having a hard time figuring out exactly who they are, how good they're going to be. In a lot of ways, this line looks similar to last week for the 49ers, where they're favored big, but they're on the road, and the strengths match up in a way that I would think it's a low-scoring game. So if it's going to be low-scoring, can you still beat a team by a touchdown plus? And the 49ers were able to against the Carolina Panthers. But of course, for those Atlanta Falcons, it's important to get players like Kyle Pitts back and get some big performances from their running game on offense to try to take advantage of some of the banged up 49ers on the defensive side of the ball. And when you look at the 49ers, Croc, right, the big storyline this week is those injuries. You've got Jimmy Ward, who came back, got hurt on the very opening kickoff of the first game he had played in 2022. Emmanuel Mosley, starting cornerback, torn ACL. He's out for the year. We'll see if Jason Verrett's able to come back. His practice window is open. He's coming off his own torn ACL from last year, hasn't played yet. Got some young players to fill in there and decent depth at cornerback. Nick Bosa has got a groin injury, has a chance to play. I feel like a lot of fans almost want to hold him out in this one because they don't want that injury to get worse. Already have been without their starting defensive tackles in Javon Kinlaw and Eric Armstead. I think that's where it's funny, because the Niners have the best defense in the league coming in, but there might be some cracks showing right in that defense right now, Croc.
Yeah, and I think those are big things that I think a lot of people are overlooking. I think the 49ers came into this season with very high expectations, and when you see how the defense has been extremely dominant through 5 games, you just assume that they're going to keep it going. But it gets a little harder when you are missing guys like Emmanuel Mosley, when you are continuing to miss Jimmy Ward, Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw. What's going to be the case for those guys? Will they be playing? Nick Bosa, will he play, or how healthy will he be if he's on the field? You're also missing a guy like Azeez Al-Shaair, who's a starting linebacker. So a lot of missing pieces. You're going to have some youthfulness on the outside. You're probably going to have some inexperience as pass rusher, and a lot of guys are going to have to step up. That's why I look at this game as maybe not so much the defense being as dominant as we've seen over the first 5 weeks, but can the offense take that next step and really help out the defense when the defense is maybe lacking or has an opportunity to kind of fall off just a little bit.
And Aaron, Croc mentioned it a bit ago, but we were talking about storylines and actual ink spilled about the Falcons over the course of the last week. It has to be about that Grady Jarrett penalty and the sack on Tom Brady, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's been what a lot of attention for the Falcons. The Falcons are getting more attention this week because of that than they probably have gotten over the last year and a half. And then you couple that with what happened in the Monday night game as well with Chris Jones and that stuff. So that's become a sort of a big storyline around the league this week. And so the Falcons are sort of front and center of that. And it's kind of strange to see people talking about the Falcons in a positive way, not making jokes about them.
All right. Key matchups coming up here in this week 6 game with the San Francisco 49ers at Atlanta Falcons. We'll make some predictions as well for week 6 coming up. But right now, I'd like to talk about our friends at Simply Safe. Here's a sports analogy for you. When it comes to burglars, your home is like the end zone, and you need the absolute strongest defense you can muster. For example, like the San Francisco 49ers. This is why I use and trust Simply Safe Home Security. At Simply Safe, your safety is the only thing that matters. It's cutting-edge technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back, so you always know your home is safe. What do you love about a modern home safety system like Simply Safe? Advanced technology. Whether it's controlling your system from your phone with the app, which is a must these days, right? You need to be able to be inside the house, see what's going on the outside, be able to be not at home and have a good idea of what's happening on your property or inside and outside of your home. Watching crystal clear HD live streams of your cameras. It doesn't help if you catch a burglar at your house and you've got this grainy footage. You're like, hey, police, look at this. Here's this grainy footage of someone that could be any human being in the world that just burgled our home. No, clear HD streams and video of your property with security cameras. And of course, a wide array of high-tech sensors, any windows, any doors that you need a sensor on in your house. You can have that with Simply Safe. And of course, 24/7 professional monitoring. Simply Safe's agents call you the moment a threat is detected and dispatch police or first responders in an emergency, even if you're not home and can't be reached. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl. Save 20% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/lockedonnfl to learn more. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers and Locked On Falcons your first listens every day. Make sure you're checking out the NFL Key Predictions show every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football, plus betting advice from the field's leading experts, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, key matchups. I want to ask you this, Aaron, because I think one of the key matchups in this game is this is the first week the 49ers, if Nick Bosa is not playing, and they are still without Eric Armstead, who might be another week away, Javon Kinlaw inside, they've still got some depth. Samson Ebukam banged up as well. They've got some depth, but you start to lose a lot of pieces on the defensive line. Could this be the first week the 49ers defense loses that battle up front? Because I feel like the Atlanta Falcons offensive line's playing pretty well. Chris Lindstrom's, I think, one of the top 5 graded players in the league right now by PFF, right?
Yeah, I believe that's true. I think he's the top guard, last I checked.
Is that a matchup you think the Falcons can win at home against the 49ers?
Yeah, it's one on paper that they should be able to win. Now, what I will point out is 2 weeks ago when they played the Browns, they were without Jadeveon Clowney and Taven Bryan and Myles Garrett. And so we thought, oh, okay, like the Falcons will have no problem against this backup group of Browns players. And Browns got a pretty good amount of pressure in that game. Obviously, the Falcons were able to sort of assert their will running the football, but it was a little bit of a concern. And then you follow that up last week against the Bucs, who were able to get a lot of pressure on Marcus Mariota in that game as well, which was a big reason why the Falcons were held scoreless for the first 3 quarters in that game. And so, like, you look at that and you say, I think the 49ers backups or non-Nick Bosa pass rushers are probably a little bit better than the Browns non-Myles Garrett pass rushers. So I do wonder a little bit if the Falcons offensive line has as much of an advantage if they don't play a little bit better in pass protection. But as I said earlier, the strength of this offense is their running game. So I think they will try to run the football down the 49ers throats. And hopefully, given some of these injuries that San Francisco's dealing with, that will be sufficient for the Falcons offense.
Is there one spot on the line that's been more leaky?
The left guard position probably is their weakest link at this point in time. And their starter, Elijah Wilkinson, did miss practice on Wednesday, but he did miss a game. I can't remember which game it was, maybe the Seahawks game. And his replacement was Kobe Gossett, and the offensive line sort of didn't skip a beat in that game. So while Wilkinson is probably the weakest link of the starting 5, I think the drop off from him to their top backup there is not significant enough to really have a dramatic impact on this matchup.
Croc, is there any key matchups you like in this one for the 49ers?
Well, I just want to know a little bit more about the Falcons defense, because we have talked a lot about kind of the offensive matchup between these two teams, well, the Falcons offense against the 49ers defense. But what is it looking like for Atlanta defensively right now? I know there's AJ Terrell out there. Has he picked up where he left off last season? Is he playing extremely well? If there is a weakness in this defense that the 49ers can potentially exploit, where would that be?
Their run defense is not great. So I think, that plays the potential strength of the 49ers with Jeff Wilson. I think he had like 160 yards the last time they played the 49ers, or something ridiculous. And that, I think, is probably the easiest way to attack the Falcons defense, if you can run the football. As for AJ Terrell, it's been an up and down season. He's coming off not a great game against Mike Evans, but like that's kind of the thing with AJ Terrell, is that when you look at his history, whether it's Mike Evans or Michael Thomas in week 1, or you can go all the way back to Jamar Chase in that national championship game, it's the more physical receivers, the bigger guys, that tend to give him a little bit more of an issue. Although he pretty much kept DK Metcalf in check in that Seattle game and basically locked down Amari Cooper, who had 1 catch in that Browns game. So like we've seen both the high end AJ Terrell and the low end AJ Terrell so far this season. And I kind of like the matchup between him and Deebo Samuel. They are kind of familiar with one another from their shared days in college at Clemson and South Carolina. And because AJ Terrell tends to do a little bit better against the more quicker route runner types that Samuel is, I think this is a favorable matchup for him. And I'm kind of expecting the Falcons probably want to play a little bit more man coverage than they are usually able to play, because last time they played the 49ers, that was pretty effective for them. But the problem for them was that Samuel and Kittle really cooked them in zone coverage, carved them up last year. And so the tight end matchup is probably one that I think is another vulnerability that the 49ers can really exploit, because the Falcons don't really have a dedicated tight end eraser. They've kind of been using Richie Grant more in that role the last couple of weeks, and he seems to be their best option in that regard, but he's giving up a lot of size to a guy like George Kittle in that regard. And then you couple that with the injury to Michael Walker, their weak side linebacker, and the guy who calls defense, he's dealing with a groin injury, and he missed practice on Wednesday. And, there are question marks if he's going to be able to make it on Sunday due to that injury. There is a little bit of vulnerability. You're going to be replacing him with Troy Anderson, their 2nd round draft pick, who's shown some promise so far this season, but still is kind of green, having converted from a quarterback and a running back to a linebacker at Montana State. So, I think that's probably another area that 49ers fans, if they can feed Kittle the ball, that will be probably advantageous to that offense.
Are the rookies a big factor right now, Aaron, with the Atlanta Falcons? I know Desmond Ridder hasn't played yet. He's the backup to Marcus Mariota, but the 2nd rounder Arnold Ebiketie is a player I really liked. Of course, top 10 pick spent on Drake London at wide receiver, and that 5th rounder you mentioned, one of the backs that's filled in for Cordarrelle Patterson. I picked up Tyler Algier on all my fantasy teams. I'm kind of waiting for a breakout moment for him. Is Algier going to get like all the carries at some point and potentially even be the guy there for the Falcons? Maybe be a league winner for me in some of my fantasy leagues?
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to win your league this year, but I think the goal is long-term, that he'll be sort of the RB1 long-term for them in the future. And he's kind of getting the bulk of the carries. It's him and Caleb Huntley. They're kind of splitting the carries these last couple of weeks with Patterson out. But Algier tends to get a little bit more of those of that workload. As for the rest of the rookies, this was something I was commenting the other day on Locked On Falcons, which was that the Falcons last year, one of the big criticisms of the coaching staff was that they weren't playing enough of the young players. It was basically Kyle Pitts was basically the only guy that played last year. And this year they're playing everybody. They're getting undrafted free agents into the mix and all that stuff. So the rookies are, I think, a big part of the Falcons' success, even if, outside of Drake London and Algier, you're not seeing anybody really make a big time impact. And, Falcon fans are just counting down the days till we get to see Desmond Ridder. So, I know there's at least a vocal contingent of the fan base that would not like to see Marcus Mariota have a good game on Sunday, so that we can speed all along that process, but we'll see what happens.
That sounds like the 49ers fan base last season, right? Or even this season where the fan base is kind of split. Half of them want to see the young guy, Trey Lance. The other half is like, no, Team Jimmy. And then this year, it almost felt like there were people rooting for Trey Lance to fail. And I know he got injured, but there were a lot of people that definitely were excited to see Jimmy Garoppolo inserted into the starting lineup. And just as many people upset about that. So we definitely understand the dynamic of having I don't want to say quarterback controversy, but a young guy behind a veteran that is kind of, whatever.
Whatever I think that's a fair way to describe both Jimmy Garoppolo and Marcus Mariota. Whatever. Yeah.
It's funny. And Aaron, be careful what you say on the podcast here, because last week we had Julian Council of Locked On Panthers, and he was talking about, man, maybe even this is the week that Matt Rule gets fired if it's a bad performance. And, the Niners are Grim Reaper right now on defense. So who knows if the Niners defense is up to the task, maybe this is the catalyst that Desmond Ridder needs to become the starter for the Atlanta Falcons. Who knows?
Yeah, I got a question for you guys, though.
Yeah.
Like, is there a vulnerability other than the injuries? Is there anything that the 49ers defense that you can attack that defense this year?
Defense is tough.
Defense is tough. And I think, for the defense, at least in week 6, you want to attack the weak spots from injury. If maybe the pass rush and the run defense isn't going to be as strong because 3 or 4 starters would be out potentially with injury. You got maybe a young player jumping in. Maybe it's rookie Samuel Womack over there at left cornerback instead of who's a player I think everyone likes with the 49ers. And
he's 5'9",
I really like.
Put Drake London over there. Drake London is 6'5".
Right. Yeah. So, maybe those are the kind of matchups you want to win and catch the 49ers when they're licking their wounds a little bit. But, man, I have not been able to find a weakness on the 49ers defense. Even the ones I thought would be weaknesses coming in, like strong safety Talanoa Hufanga. Is he more of a box safety, not being good in coverage? He's got a couple picks. He's got a pick 6. He's been everywhere. He's been a superstar for the 49ers defense. So it's really hard to poke holes in what the 49ers have on the defensive side of the ball. What you need to do is score with the Falcons defense, maybe get a pick 6 of your own and hope the 49ers offense and Jimmy Garoppolo throws the ball to the wrong team. I think that's probably the best way that, and that's kind of how it's felt with the 49ers offense fumbling away some wins more than the defense this year.
The 49ers offense, definitely, if you're going to try to take advantage of one side, again, the injuries, we just don't know how it's going to play out. But offensively, the 49ers just haven't really been this juggernaut of an offense that we've seen in the past. And if you go back to 2019, you see 49ers scoring 27, averaging 27 points per game. Well, that hasn't been the case this year. And even if you go back to the last game against Carolina, it was kind of weird in the first half where it felt like the 49ers were dominating, but heading into halftime, it looked like it was going to be a 10-3 game. And then all of a sudden, Emmanuel Mosley gets a pick 6, and then the 49ers end up scoring another touchdown. And then I think they had a late touchdown because the Panthers went for it on their own 3-yard line. They had to, right? And the 49ers stopped them, and then they turned around and had a 3-yard touchdown. So some of those points, a couple of those touchdowns could be, accredited to the defense and what they've done. And that's kind of been the case for the most part this season.
Okay. All
right. With all that information, let's make some predictions, guys, and try to figure out what this game is going to look like Sunday with the 49ers and the Falcons next. Now, though, Prize Picks. And how about this for Prize Picks? I think we got some good information for your Prize Picks this week, right? More or less. I'm thinking maybe George Kittle, after hearing Aaron talk about that matchup, George Kittle maybe going more or less than his catches, maybe going more on the reception yards for George Kittle. And Prize Picks is super fun and super easy. It is daily fantasy made easy. All you do is you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. And you're not competing against other people. It's just you versus those projections available at Prize Picks. So it's not some big pool of sharks in the fantasy world that you are playing against. No, it's just you pick the projections you like, and you go pick more or less than those projections they have up at Prize Picks. And it's not just football either. It's not just NFL. There's college football, NBA, MLB, NHL, golf, combat sports, tennis, NASCAR, motorsports, you name it, they have it, even disc golf at Prize Picks. Entries can be made in less than 60 seconds, super easy. Withdrawals are fast, safe, and easy. And Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. All right, Aaron, I'm going to let you go first and make a prediction here for week 6 with the 49ers at the Falcons. But real quick, I just want to recap how it might look with a Falcons victory, and you can maybe add some to this. So we talked about some of the injuries on the 49ers defense, and it's got to start up front, right, for the Falcons offense and a powerhouse running game. And then maybe you're going to hit a couple of deep passes. Like draw me a picture of a Falcons win here, and then you tell me how realistic it is and if you think that's going to happen on Sunday.
Yeah, I think, they can get the run game going against a beat up 49ers front. It doesn't have to be dominant or anything like that, but just enough to keep them in favorable third down situations so that pass rush, regardless of who's healthy, isn't able to sort of pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. That really was a problem for them last year. And so, I do think a sort of a balanced attack and getting Drake London a lot of targets in this game, and maybe, just maybe, they might even throw the ball at Kyle Pitts if he plays. So that will be beneficial to this team. So I think that's kind of a balanced attack is going to be where the Falcons offense looks like this week.
Aaron, I got so much stock in the Falcons right now, which is probably not the best offense to have a ton of stock in. But I got Algier, as I mentioned, on a bunch of my fantasy teams. In our Locked On Dynasty League, I drafted Kyle Pitts last year. I was so excited about it. And I thought he was going to be just the dominant tight end starting now in the NFL. And he's kind of taken a step back statistic-wise from last year. Obviously banged up, was out last week. We'll see if he plays this week. But what's going on with Kyle Pitts? Is it something he's doing? Is Marcus Mariota not the type of guy who likes to look at his tight ends? Because it's kind of freaking me out a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. It basically boils down to the fact that I think a lot of people, myself included, thought the Falcons would not be very good this year and they would throw the ball a ton. And so it was like, oh, Kyle Pitts, it's easy money every week long. And then now the Falcons suddenly decided, hey, we actually want to be good in a competitive, football team. And the strength of our offense is running the football, and our quarterback is kind of bad most weeks. And so, like, as long as we don't ask him to throw the football, our offense can move. And when we ask him to throw the football, then problems start to arise. And that's basically the situation that Kyle Pitts finds himself in. I think he'll start getting going as the season progresses. But, for now, it's kind of, throwing him the ball is kind of a losing strategy, not because it has anything to do with him, but just simply because the Falcons passing game is not great.
Not ideal.
BetOnline.
If you're a pass catcher, I mean, that's the thing that's got to be super frustrating, right? Showing up every week, and I know he's kind of banged up right now, but heading out there knowing the likelihood of him having the explosive games that he had with Matt Ryan just isn't on the table for him in the foreseeable future. We'll see if Ritter gets in there, and there might be a change up in philosophy just a little bit.
Yeah, it might be more fun, but there might be, bigger losses too. You raise the floor and you drop the floor, but you raise the ceiling. I think that might be more fun in some ways, but I like the way the Falcons are competing right now. So we'll see how long that continues. And by the way, my apologies up front, Aaron. Former Locked On Dynasty League champion, right? Aaron Freeman. I did not address you properly earlier when speaking of that Dynasty League. Croc, what do you think? How you see this one going?
I like the 49ers, but if you kind of follow the trend here, the Falcons, I was confused at how I was supposed to say it, but the Falcons are covering the spread. So I think a lot of 49er fans probably think, oh, this guaranteed win, they're going to just run them over. Again, I have to see the 49ers. Can they score points? Again, that's been my challenge to them for like a few weeks. Like, can offense score more points? Can offense score more points? Well, they did last week. Can they do it again? Falcons have kept games close. They played teams very well. So I got the 49ers. But in a close game, 49ers win by 4. We'll say 17-21. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Niners win, but not covering those 5.5 points. I'll save my.
They don't cover that. They don't cover the spread. But yeah, 49ers win.
I'll save my prediction for Friday's show, our Keys to Victory show, Croc. So we can we can tease a little nugget there for the Locked On 49ers listeners. And by the way, thanks to all the listeners for making Locked On 49ers and Locked On Falcons your first listens every day. For Eric Crocker and Aaron Freeman, I am Brian Peacock. We appreciate you. Make sure after your first listens of the podcast covering your favorite teams, check out some of the national shows. Crocker's doing Locked On NFL Draft Daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I am talking about the entire league with my guy, former NFL scout Matt Williamson, on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And we will be back with you guys tomorrow on both Locked On 49ers and Locked On Falcons. Talk to you then.